First matchup, I love Najee Harris at the Las Vegas Raiders. Look, guys, the Raiders are a mess. We've seen it, and I think Harris will be primed to benefit. I know he hasn't been a standout so far this year, and I do think the Steelers are missing Jalen Warren, as we talked about yesterday, but the Raiders lead the league in missed tackles on defense, and they're giving up the 7 most points to running backs. And they allow the fourth most yards after catch. So I think Najee can not only have a really good game on the ground, but also be a benefactor in the passing game as well. He's been actually more efficient as a pass catcher this year than he's been as a runner. So I think he could exploit those weaknesses, and I think it'll be another weak showing from the Raiders, and Harris might cash in.
What about your second matchup you love this week?
Yeah, second matchup I love, and we talked about a little bit with Derek Carr out, but I still think I love Rasheed Shaheed versus the Bucs. Looks like he's emerging as the WR1 for the Saints. He out over the last 2 games, he's out targeted Chris Olave 20 targets to 14. I think he's showing his growing importance to the offense. Shaheed is the consensus WR32, so it puts him in flex territory, but I would fire him up with confidence. And a lot of people really liked Spencer Rattler out of the draft, and he looked really, really impressive in pro days. I believe he was at the combine too.
Preseason, he looked nice too.
Preseason, he looked really good as well. So it can't get any worse than it's been for Carr over the past 3 games.
Don't shoot me. I can't believe it's week 6 and this is happening. But Daniel Jones versus the Bengals. The Bengals defense right now, they're a bit of a dumpster fire. They're giving up the 4th most fantasy points to quarterbacks. They've surrendered 2 or more passing touchdowns in the last 4 games. QBs on average are rushing for 33 yards, so that's already putting up a decent floor for him. Bengals are second worst in sacks, so there's not really pressuring the quarterback all that much. Their defense can't really stop a nosebleed, and Jones has been pretty good as of late. He put up 24 points against Seattle. He's actually QB 15 on the year, which is higher than Mahomes. And with the return of Malik Neighbors, I think he's primed for another 20-plus point outing and brings him up into QB territory for week 6. It's a defense that can be had. In the last 2 weeks, this player has put up 50 fantasy points, 5-0. He's 37 for 166, 2 touchdowns. He's also added 9 receptions for 119 yards. It's not CMC, it's not Barkley, it's not LT out of retirement. This is DeAndre Swift we're talking about. This week he has another plus matchup versus everyone's favorite run defense that gives up the 4th most fantasy points, the Jacksonville Jaguars. So I think DeAndre Swift here is a must start. I don't care that the game's in London, like I mentioned. To me, Swift is going to swiftly hit RB1 numbers for the 3rd straight week, and you'll be very happy that you did not cut him in your lineup.
Yeah, I don't think anyone was really going to drop him, but man, the first few weeks it looked pretty bleak in that backfield. They may have finally found a way to use him properly and efficiently.
It's a byproduct also of the offense in general running better in Chicago, and you see that with Caleb Williams, how he's slinging the ball a lot more, and that's obviously helping the running game as well by extension. Again, the defense, it's a good matchup.
I'm going to go, my first player here, I'm going to go with DeAndre Hopkins versus the Colts. He was injured to start the season, but he's been ramping up week after week. He had a great game in week 3 versus Green Bay, but then put up a dud on Monday Night Football in Miami. That was a dumpster fire game from start to finish, so I don't think anyone really finished with good numbers. But look for him to be, I think, he's fresh coming off a bye as well, and he gets an indie team that's given up the 7th most points to wide receivers. So look for him to be the focal point in the passing game in week 6. We still don't know if Levis is healthy enough to start or if it's going to be Mason Rudolph, but I think I have more confidence in Mason Rudolph at this point than I do in Levis. So I'm definitely firing up DeAndre Hopkins this week. But he finished with 4 catches on 10 targets, 60 yards. So very underwhelming. Again, a lot of people calling for Deshaun Watson's head in that offense. I'm hoping something happens and Jameis Winston kind of comes into this game. But he gets another shot this week at a really shaky secondary. He gets an Eagles team giving up the 4th most points to wide receivers. So I think he's due for a big game, and I think this is the week. This is the week where you'll see another breakout performance from Amari Cooper. Like, I don't think they go 2 weeks in a row without without lighting up a really shoddy defense.
Yes, the first matchup I hate this week is Justin Herbert at Denver. Herbert's season has been mired in consistent pressure, and it's led to many nagging injuries so far. His offensive line has allowed the fourth highest pressure rate in the NFL, and now they're coming off a bye in week 6, and he's up against the Broncos defense that is allowing the 6th fewest fantasy points to QBs and generating the 3rd most amount of pressure. So it's a recipe for disaster for Herbert. We all love his talent, but the Chargers right now are hesitant to throw. They become solely a running team. And quite frankly, he's performing like a QB3. So I expect another tough game for him. Gino Smith against the Niners. And I'm a Geno Smith owner. I'm heavily invested in Jackson Smith and Jigba as well. So I'm hoping I'm wrong, but the numbers don't lie. In his last 3 games against the Niners, he's averaged just 205 yards passing per game and only 1 TD and 2 interceptions. And it amounts to a disappointing 9.5 fantasy points. So the Niners can be run on. We saw what happened against the Cardinals on Sunday. They allowed 169 rushing yards. Mind you, half of those were from Kyler Murray, but Geno is no Kyler. So I think as good as Geno has been, they're not passing. They're passing the ball really well, but they're not finishing drives. So I think this is going to be a tough one for Geno Smith and the Seahawks.
But it's Josh Allen. Like he's a start every single week. Nobody in their right mind is ever going to bench Josh Allen, even in 2 QB leagues. Realistically speaking, however, temper your expectations. By the way, thank you for putting Malik Neighbors within that sentence.
Look,
I appreciate that.
You're on top of the world if you bench him and he has an absolute dud. You're on top of the world. You're feeling amazing.
Yeah,
but if you do that and he goes off, like I would not live with myself that weekend.
And he put up a dud the week before.
He put up 2 duds in a row.
Yeah, he did. You're absolutely right.
2 duds in a row.
That team
maybe this is the hat trick, or maybe 3rd time's the charm. He's going to actually pull something out. Who knows? But it's the toughest defense to play against. It's a divisional game. It's in enemy territory.
Yeah, for sure.
Proceed with caution.
And who's the second matchup you don't like this week?
Brian Robinson Jr. playing at the Baltimore Ravens. Not really much to say here. Baltimore run D has been very good and basically has come as advertised. They have yet to allow a rusher to hit 50 yards, which is pretty impressive, let alone 100, right? So currently Ravens D are giving up 60.4 yards per game. On average, that's collective. I'm saying as an individual rusher, no one's ever hit 50 yards yet. They're giving up the 5th fewest fantasy points to opposing running backs. Brian Robinson's also a little banged up, so just keep in mind. But if he is playing, I would not even be starting him. He's a low-end flex play this week, despite him being pretty good this year from a fantasy perspective. He's been putting up solid points week in and week out, but this is not a matchup that you can trust, and so I would be looking elsewhere this week. I see a trend.
And lastly, I have Trevor Lawrence at the Bears. It is the game in London. So fantasy managers finally got the game they've been waiting for from Lawrence in week 5. He put up 24.24 fantasy points versus an Indy defense. But I wouldn't get too excited because he gets a Bears secondary giving up the fewest points to QBs through 5 weeks. I believe they were 32nd when I looked at it.
Yeah.
I think Lawrence struggles to even get double-digit fantasy points in week 6. We know how those London games could be. Thanks, Fab. For me, I have Chuba Hubbard versus the Falcons. He's been great the past 3 weeks, putting up 27.9, 22.1, and 17.5 points respectively, but has had some very plus matchups in those games. In week 6, he gets a Falcons team that gives up the 9th fewest fantasy points, to opposing running backs. And that offense has also been clicking. So Carolina will likely be behind early and often, and will have to rely more on the passing game. So I feel like our little Canadian boy is set to struggle in week 6.
He's Canadian?
Yeah.
He is.
I had no idea. Well, good for him.
I believe it's Vancouver or somewhere in BC.
Well, now I'm going to root for the guy.
I always liked Hubbard. Always
It
liked
is
him.
Chuba, right? It's not Chubba.